Hello YouTube, Captain Mac here, and welcome to the full flight tutorial for the Aerosoft AIRBUS A330 Professional. That's like a mouthful, isn't it? I'd like to start out by sending a very special thank you to my good friend John, who has donated this aircraft to me. For about the last week or week and a half, I've been helping him wrestle with this beast and some of the quirks that come along with it. And the other day he asked me if I'd like a copy of the aircraft, and I said, well, yeah, absolutely. And so John was so kind and generous to purchase a copy of the aircraft for me, and I'm really grateful for that. And thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it. Now, with that said, this is a tutorial that's actually really long overdue for a couple of reasons. First of all, this aircraft has been out for quite a while. This is not a brand new release for Airbus, but with me having been gone for quite some time, yeah, I never really got to it. But also, quite a while back, I can't even remember how far back, Black Box was making an A330, and in fact they released an early version of it, which I had. I probably still have it somewhere, and I think we may have even done a couple flights in it. I don't recall, but I had said that I wanted to do a full flight tutorial on it when Black Box got around to releasing the full version. Now, I don't know if they've gotten to that point or not. I didn't even bother to look. Quite frankly, like many of you, I got frustrated when updates and releases were so slow. Now, to be fair, I believe it's just two guys working on things at Black Box. I don't know the whole story there, so it's in no way intended to bash on them or put them down. But it just never really came to fruition. So the opportunity to put together this full flight tutorial for you guys is something that's not only long overdue, but I've really been looking forward to. So I hope that you guys enjoy this. I hope that you learn something from it, even if you've had the aircraft for a while and are quite familiar with it. I think there's a lot of little things to learn, and I think we're going to have a good time with it. So with that all said, what do you say we get started? So I got to tell you, I don't know what it is about this section of the video, but I've had to redo the recording of it like 5 or 6 times now, because for whatever reason I just can't seem to get certain things straight in my head how I want to present them. So I'm going to try and present this as simple as possible, and hopefully I get across all the points that are pertinent to your full flight tutorial on this aircraft. So if you have any Aerosoft aircraft, you're familiar with their configurator tool, and it varies a little with the A320 series and probably the A320 Pro, and this one's for the A330. Overall, there's not a lot you need to do with this program, in my opinion. Okay, if you're messing with this program, you probably either know what you're doing or somebody's told you specifically, hey, you need to go in and do this, like the logging stuff and whatnot. I don't mess with any of this stuff. I don't change any of this stuff except for this right here. I use NAVIGRAPH, not NavData Pro. Now, if you use NavData Pro, you don't need to do anything on here. If you use NAVIGRAPH, you need to go onto this General tab. You need to select NAVIGRAPH here. And then you need to go all the way over here to EFB settings if you want to be able to use your charts. And you need to select NAVIGRAPH here, and then you need to log in. There will be a button right here that says log in using web browser. When you click on that, it'll open a web page to NAVIGRAPH charts login. You log in there and give it permission to connect or whatever, and then you're good to go. Here's the skinny though. Almost every time you shut down the simulator, it logs you back out through this. The configurator automatically logs out. It doesn't do it every time, but it definitely does it at least every 2 times. The problem with that is you don't know that, right? So what ends up happening is you start up your simulator and then you see this. And unfortunately, there's no way to log back in through the EFB. You have to open the configurator. And you say, okay, well, it's not a big deal. I'll open the configurator and log in. Yes, but when you do that, you're still going to see this. Because you have to restart your simulator after logging in. And then sometimes, and this has happened to me twice now, unfortunately, you open it up, you log in, and you say, okay, you shut down your simulator, and you shut this down, you restart your simulator, and it's logged out again. How obnoxious. Okay, now the PMDG 747-8 does something similar, except that you can log back in through the EFB, and it reconnects right there through the EFB. But because Aerosoft has put this in a separate program like this, it won't reconnect unless you restart the sim. So here's what you should do. Before you start your simulator, if you plan on using the charts on the EFB, start up the configurator, make sure you're logged in, leave this window open, start your simulator, load in your aircraft, and then close this window out. Good to go? Fantastic. Now, with that in mind, you got your FS2 crew tab. Also, if you don't know anything about that, well, either it's enabled or disabled. If you have it, enable it, and then you can use it. And the reason is because of the built-in checklist, which I'll show you when we get to that point. Also, you can add some files here. I don't use it, but there are different places you can put various files in the EFB to make use of them, and I'll show you those when we get in there and take a look at the EFB, and you'll understand what this is all about. But we need to look at something else first. I'm going to leave this open for the moment, and I'm going to bring this guy over here. All right, so here's the deal. If you have a NavData Pro, or now, you know what? I can't even speak for NavData Pro. I can only speak for NAVIGRAPH. John and I worked several times, and it really took a shared screen and looking at a lot of stuff to figure out what was going on. He was updating his nav data, but when he'd go into the aircraft and he'd pull up the FM or the MCDU, it would say that his nav data was out of date. And it was really frustrating for him, and I understand that. And I thought initially it was because he had the old version of the Aerosoft A320 series, and then he upgraded to the Pro Aerosoft A320 Pro series, and then he bought this aircraft. And what was happening is what I thought was happening is the nav data was being put in the wrong folder, basically. So here's the deal. I don't have any of those other aircraft on here, just this one, all right? And when I go to update the nav data, mine works just fine. Here's what was happening with John. If you go in this nav data folder and you pull up cycle info, you'll see that this is an outdated cycle. It's AIRAC cycle 1913. We are on 2007. If you go into this folder and you pull up the cycle info, you'll see that it is AIRAC cycle 2007, the current AIRAC cycle. For some reason, on John's installation, and he's reinstalled several times, the NAVIGRAPH data is going into this folder, but the aircraft is looking at this folder. We have no idea why. Now you might say to yourself, well, just delete that folder. I'd be careful about just randomly deleting a folder that's connected to any add-on aircraft, especially one that works so much outside of the sim like this one does. So what we did for John is we went into this folder with the current AIRAC cycle, select all, copy, go back here into this folder and paste, and then overwrite everything in here. All right. If you're updating your AIRAC cycle and it's not showing up inside the aircraft, go into this folder, all right, or this folder, your local disk, users, your name, documents, Aerosoft General, and look and see if you've got these two folders. If you do, find the one that's got the current cycle and copy that and paste it into the one that doesn't, and you should be good to go with your navigation data. Why it's doing that, I honestly have no idea. I think what's happening is this, I believe, is a folder for NavData Pro, and this is the folder that NAVIGRAPH created when I mapped it to the simulator. A little bit frustrating, but not the end of the world. Now, while I've got this folder open for you, you can go in here to your EFB, A330, Assets, and these are all the different tabs on your EFB. Now, here's the deal with the EFB. There are a lot of folks, who are having a problem with the simulator crashing, CTD, crash the desktop, when they try to use the EFB. There's a number of problems associated with this, not the least of which is Aerosoft has no idea why it's happening. And I don't hold that against them. I can't figure for the life of me why it'd be happening either, especially when it happens on different systems for different reasons. So for example, I haven't had any crashes on mine using the EFB, but John has had crashes on his. In fact, his was crashing every time he tried to use the charts until we got his cycle, his AIRAC cycle updated. Some folks, when they try to use the user links on the chart on the EFB, which I'll show you when we get in there, it crashes when they try to do that. Others, it crashes when they try to. It just depends on what it is. It's crashing for different reasons on different systems with different hardware, different software, and all of that. And so it's really hard for Aerosoft to track it down. So all of that being said, my take on it is this. If you want to use the charts in the EFB, by all means, go for it. Make sure you set it up properly, basically what we've just shown you. Make sure that your AIRAC cycle is updated, all right? Before going in there and trying it, make sure your AIRAC cycle is updated and that you have logged in to the EFB charts using the configurator before you load the aircraft, and I think you'll be good to go. That being said, I don't use like the user links tab and stuff because hasn't been, you know, I don't have any reason to. I don't see any reason. We're talking about actual links like to web pages and stuff. I don't see any reason to do that in there, to be honest with you, and I think that might be part of the problem. I have gone into the user EFF. I've put a flight plan in there. You can put your flight plan in there. This is an old one right here, and this is the one that shows up. In fact, well, you can't change anything in here and expect it to show up while the sim's running. But I'm going to delete it anyway. No, you know what? I'm not going to mess with it because then it might crash. But you can save a PDF of your flight plan in here so that you have it available in the EFB and all of that. There's plenty you can do with it. Take a look at the documentation that came with the aircraft, and that'll get you headed on the right track. All of that being said, if you're having problems with that EFB and it's causing your sim to crash, the only thing I can think of that might help fix that is making sure that your AIRAC cycle is updated and that you're logged into NAVIGRAPH before you start up the sim. If it's still crashing every time you use the EFB, Aerosoft's recommendation right now is simply do not use the EFB. So it's a real shame because it looks like this has been going on for quite a while, and in my opinion they should either have it fixed by now or have done something to, you know, whatever it is. I don't know. You know, I get that they're having a hard time tracking it down, but it needs to be addressed, and, you know, that's pretty much that. Okay, I've talked enough about that. There is one other tool, but we're not going to talk about it until we jump into the aircraft, and that's our fuel planner. But that takes care of discussion of our configurator and should get you on the right track as to where your folders are and how to get your AIRAC cycle working properly if you're having a hard time with that. All right, welcome to the flight deck, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I want to start off by saying one of the things that I have always loved about the Airbus, even though I'm a Boeing guy through and through, I am a Boeing fan, but I've always appreciated the I guess the clean look of their flight decks. I really do. And if you've flown any Airbus or watched any videos on an Airbus, you'll see that this flight deck really is the same as the entire A320 series. Now, that being said, the A350, the A380, they are quite a bit different as far as their appearance on the flight deck. But overall, there's enough similarities that it's pretty easy to find your way around. And you can say the same about Boeing, too. It's pretty easy to find your way around once you're familiar with it. But I do appreciate the clean look of an Airbus flight deck. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. So before we dive into anything else, we want to go ahead and take care of our cockpit safety inspection. And this is very short and straightforward. We're going to come down here, and these are our engine master switches. We want to make sure they are both in the off position. The mode selector is in the normal position, which is at the 12 o'clock. The landing gear lever is in the down position. The wipers are off. Not really sure why that is, but both of these need to be off. Battery 1 and 2, we want to check that those are off, which they are. Now, this is a dark cockpit concept. That's how Airbus works, which means lights that are off usually means that something is on, and lights that are on usually means that it's something that needs your attention. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule. For example, when we turn on the external power, which we're not going to do yet, that light, that on light will turn blue. And blue, if I remember correctly, means that it's temporary or short term. In other words, it's not going to stay in that condition permanently, and that's why the light stays on. And when the light is off, that means that there's nothing going on there. But the long and short of it is when addressing the different buttons and stuff on the overhead panel, in general, most of the time, if there's no light, then it is already in the condition that it needs to be in. You don't need to do anything with it. Now, There is an exception to that as well, and that is only because we don't have power on the aircraft right now. If I were to turn on the external power, which I'm not going to do, we'll get to that in a minute, then the off lights should show for battery 1 and 2, and then we would just turn both of those on. It's real simple, and we'll do that when the time comes. So, moving on, we want to make sure that our battery 1 and battery 2 voltage are both greater than 25 volts. Right now it's on the APU voltage. If you left click, it goes to battery 2. That's at 27.2, and then battery 1 is at 27.4. So our voltage is good, and that takes care of our cockpit safety inspection. Now, as far as the checklist flow is concerned, this would move us into our preliminary cockpit preparation. However, that's not what I want to do, because I want to take this section and dedicate it to the EFB so that we have a better understanding of what's going on there. But in order to do that, we do need to bring power on the aircraft. We have external power connected, and I'll show you where that's done. As a matter of fact, just real quick, we'll hop back here. This MCDU is only for these functions you see here, and we're not going to go through all of them at the moment. We'll do it in a few minutes, but I just want to go to ground services, make sure your traffic cones and wheel chocks are set, and then you can use either or both of these external power functions. And then if you use GSX, make sure you switch this to yes. If you don't use GSX, make sure this is on no. All right, enough said about that. We'll come back to this in a few minutes. But now that we know ground power is on, we can hop up here and you can see it shows available. So we'll click on it, and there you see battery 1 and 2 are both off. Okay, and again, the light on means that it needs to be addressed. Now the lights go off, which means they're on. Same thing with the APU battery, and that brings power onto the aircraft, and you can see that our displays and whatnot are starting to power up. Now the purpose of this portion of the tutorial is to go over our EFB. So let's jump down here, and here she is. Okay, now this first page, checks and flows. By all means, make solid use of this. You guys know me, I will probably forget half a dozen times at least, which is about the number of times you use a checklist. No, you actually use it more than that, obviously. But I constantly forget to use the internal ones because I'm so used to using paper checklists. The paper checklist that I have is I'm using the normal procedure guide that came with the A330, and it is for the A320 series, professional series of aircraft. So that's interesting little sidebar on that. But you can come in here, follow your checklist, and once you get down here, you see you've got the cockpit preparation, which is we're in the preliminary cockpit preparation right now, which I believe is up here further. Preliminary cockpit preparation. So these are some of the things that we're going to be doing, but not necessarily all of them. And there's some things that are on here that don't have to be covered. So anyway, the point is you got your checklist here. You just click right here. It interacts with the mouse flawlessly, and you got all your checklists available to you. Charts. This is where you're going to pull up your charts from if you have NAVIGRAPH or NavData Pro. It's very simple to use. You're going to click twice. If I click once, it does nothing. Click again, and it pulls up the little keyboard. All right, so we want KSFO. Let's type that in, hit enter. That's our departure airport. Click on that, and all of a sudden, all your charts show up in this nice, long, ugly list, which is a bit of a pain. You can use your mouse wheel to scroll, which is nice. We're taking the truck and 2 departure today, so when you click on it, it pops up there. Click this little arrow, that moves that over and out of the way. However, we don't want to have to keep going through this list. See this little button right here? You're going to click that. All right, now I've already clicked it, so it's not going to do anything. But let me just grab a different one just to show you. You'll see all of these will kind of flash real quick. See that flash? Now that means that it's saved to my clipboard. I've already done this for the ground charts and the departure chart. So if I go over here to the clipboard and click on it, you can see there's all the charts that I added to the clipboard. All right, now we're taking the truck in 2. We just click on it, and there it is. I don't need this one. If I right click it, I can remove it from the knee board, as simple as that. All right, so that's how you set up your clipboard for your charts. It's got a night mode. It's not really night mode, it just makes everything else darker, but in my opinion, it makes it a little harder sometimes to see the charts. It just depends. So it's up to you which one you want to use, but it's not really a night mode, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. EFF, again, this is one of the folders that was in that folder that I showed you guys at the start of this tutorial. Now, I've had these show up and not show up. It's interesting. So whether or not they'll always be here, I don't know. But if they are and you want to use them, by all means use them. I can just about guarantee that's what's going to show up in our MCDU when we do all our performance setup. Okay. Here under flight package, this is that old flight. You see how it's really hard to read? It's so bright, and there's no brightness adjustment, right? Like this is for zooming. I can't adjust the brightness on here, so that's frustrating to me. But this was a different flight plan anyway. This isn't the one we're using. I put this in there when I was testing this stuff out. All right. But you saw the folder where it was at. So if you put that in here, you should be good to go. Okay. Weather data. I don't know. Get data. Yeah, no METAR. Can you type it in? You can't even type it in. So I don't know how you're supposed to get weather data. I haven't been able to get it to work anyway. So there you have it. You do have a satellite view of Europe, satellite view of Canada, and a satellite view of Africa if they'll come up, which they're not coming up for me, so I'm not going to mess with it. Then you've got your docs. You can see that I put a flight plan in here. It's that same flight plan. So again, a PDF version in there works just fine. This briefing, so these are different briefings that you give. Your approach briefing shows up here. Takeoff briefing, looks like they're in alphabetical order. I don't use these. You've got checklists in here if you want to use these checklists instead of the checks and flows that are here. And then the placeholders, basically this is just what it sounds like. It's a placeholder so you can replace it with something. And then you have the links tab. I don't use any links in here. I don't use the conversion tools. I don't use this at all. And this, as far as I can tell, is the oh, I hate that. All of a sudden I'm getting in my headset, I don't think you can hear it, I'm getting traffic calls or radio calls even though the radios are off. Let's go back over here. Right in the middle of a tutorial, things like that just absolutely throw off your flow. Anyway, the links page. This seems to be where most people are running into their problems, so my recommendation is stay away from it. If your system's not crashing when you go in here to use charts and stuff, then I highly recommend that you avoid the links so that it doesn't start crashing. You've got some favorites here. You can save favorite airports. Pretty straightforward there. I haven't done that. Again, I don't really use this. I use Sim Toolkit Pro, but I still really like having the EFB in here. I think it's fantastic. You know, that's the way all modern aircraft fly, especially passenger aircraft or commercial aircraft. So it seems to me that you know, it'd be great if all of the add-on aircraft that came out these days had these in there. So I'm glad it's here, but it definitely needs some work still. And then this is just some settings. I don't mess with anything in here either. And there you have it. So pretty straightforward. The main thing you're going to probably use in here is the charts. Put them on, again, click this button to put them on your knee board. There you go. And then, again, if you want your flight plan and stuff, you can put it in here, or you can put it in here, and you should be good to go. And that really is the gist of the EFB for the A330 Professional. So I got to tell you guys, I don't know what it is about this aircraft, but I've done a lot of full flight tutorials, and for some reason with this particular airplane, I think it's because there's so many little additional things. It's not a hard aircraft to fly. It's not hard to learn. It's not hard to fly. It's not hard to operate. But you've got a fuel planner that's outside of the sim. You've got an EFB that essentially functions outside of the sim. You've got the configurator tool that functions outside of the sim. You've got all these things that are making this a lot more difficult to use than it really needs to be. I really like the way PMDG did the 747-8, especially with the EFB where the charts login and everything was integrated right into the sim, so that when you do it, you can do it while the sim's running and you're good to go. All of that being said, it's still a great aircraft. I just think that you know, it's making me bounce back and forth so many times. Like this particular section right here is the third time that I've started recording it because it didn't like the format. I didn't like the way it was laying out. And I don't script anything. So if I make a mistake 10 minutes into something and I feel like I have to redo it, I got to redo that whole 10 minutes. But anyway, let's jump back here. We're going to take care of fuel and payload here in just a minute. And then that'll actually take us into our preliminary cockpit preparation. However, I wanted to go over this particular MCDU really quick because these are the only functions that are available to you here. This is not like these up here where you set in your flight plan and all that. This is specific to, think of it like the FS options, flight simulator options that you get in the PMDG FMCs, okay? So first of all, you got your aircraft state. Now, we started with the aircraft cold and dark, but the default is the turnaround state. I could change the default to the cold and dark by just clicking right here. I'm not going to do that. The reason I'm not going to do that is because when I fly this aircraft 99.9% of the time, I will start in the turnaround state because you don't normally get an aircraft in the cold and dark state. We've been over that before on this channel. However, for a full flight tutorial, you guys want to know how to start it up, so I changed it to the cold and dark state. And all you do is click on the line select key over here, and it takes care of it for you. It takes about 30 seconds, and you're good to go. I'm not going to do it again because we already put power on the aircraft. All right. Aircraft doors, pretty straightforward, self-explanatory. You don't even need power on the aircraft to open these up. I'm going to open them up right now because here in a little bit, we're going to start loading packs and cargo with GSX. So just click on them to open them. If they're open, they show up in yellow, and if you want to close them, you click on them again, and when they're closed, they show up in white. Very simple and self-explanatory. Ground services, we touched on this very briefly. Again, you can use both external power or just the GPU. It's a good idea to make sure your wheel chocks and traffic cones are always put in. And again, we're using GSX services, so we've selected yes there. And you have your pushback function is in here as well. And I'm about to have a hiccup here. There we go. That one wasn't loud. Some of them are. All right, so again, self-explanatory here. In the pushback section, I clicked it, nothing happened, probably because I have GSX services turned on, but it does have a built-in pushback feature. Options, pretty self-explanatory. You got sound, views, checklist options, okay, what you can see and whatnot. We'll talk about what this is referring to in a minute. Flight data recorder, turn it on, turn it off. All right, I don't know what this actually does. Again, there's not an actual manual with this. I'm sure that this is a data recorder that's specific to the simulator. Otherwise, why even have the function in here? Because the flight data recorder for the aircraft would be elsewhere. Flight information, you can pause at top of descent, pause at next waypoint, pause at your next altitude step. So if you got a if you need to step from 36 to 38,000, you can have it set so that it automatically pauses at that step. So if you're away, say you got to go eat dinner or something, there you go. Aircraft information up here, fly-by-wire, we've got it turned on. Thrust bump, tiller, all of that stuff. It's all right in here, pretty straightforward. And you can see we've got our weight unit set to pounds because it's an American aircraft. And then weather over here, sim default is... I guess that's saying though, that's saying the weather is, I hadn't even gone into this one. So we're not using the sim default weather. And it's not letting me turn that off. Do I have this thing paused or something? No, I don't. So it's not even letting me change that. But we can't use VATSIM or IVAO because we don't fly on them anyway. So it says set one option to on. It'd be nice if it gave an option for active sky, in my opinion. Okay, but that's everything on here in the options section. Then you got the load and fuel, which we'll go into in a minute, and then you got your checklist here. So you can turn checklists on, and you can set it so that you have a co-pilot, and the pilot and the co-pilot will read and go through most of the checklists themselves, but they won't do everything. That's the key. They won't do everything. So if you're going to use this function, you still need to know what's being done and what needs to be done so that you can take action when necessary. I don't use that function. And then connected flight deck. I've never been able to get a flight deck to connect in any aircraft, no matter what I've tried, even using external programs and so on. I can never get it to work. But if you can, more power to you. Okay? All right. So that's all your functions on your MCDU menu down here. Now, we are going to take care of our payload and our fuel, but in order to do that, first I want you to take a look at our actual operational flight plan, because when we use the fuel planner for the A330, you're going to see that there are some differences here. So real quick, just going through this, we do this anyway. It's San Francisco to Minneapolis, St. Paul. Air distance is 1,410 nautical miles. Our trip fuel is 38,263 pounds. Final reserve fuel of 5,090 pounds. Our block fuel is 58,057 pounds. Scrolling on down here, you can see we're scheduled for 292 packs. Only 2,000 pounds of cargo. This is one of those things that I think SimBrief does a really poor job on. Even if you take away the fact that cargo companies use space in these passenger aircraft to move cargo and parcels and stuff, even taking that away, 292 passengers are going to have a lot more than 2,000 pounds of baggage, especially in America where we travel heavy. Like we take the living room couch with us, for crying out loud. So I don't think that it does a good job of the amount of cargo that it auto generates in here. But that's what we have. We're looking at a zero fuel weight of 350,000 pounds and a takeoff weight of 406,000 pounds, according to our operational flight plan. Now, in order to take care of our fuel and payload, hold on. Okay, there we go. We're going to go through our load and fuel section here, right? Now, you can put in the number of packs directly. Let's say there was 150. Type 150, put it in there. You can do the same for cargo, the same for fuel, and then when you click on each of these, it'll start boarding, it'll start loading cargo, and it'll start loading fuel. Okay? Couple of notes here, and then I'm going to show you a couple other a different way of doing this. First of all, when you do this, if you're using GSX like I am, load your fuel first. Otherwise, what's going to happen is all your packs are going to board, all your cargo is going to get loaded, then the fuel truck's going to show up and take care of your fuel. Now, ultimately, the fuel is going to be loaded by the sim, not by GSX, but because you have GSX, it's going to assume that you called for a fuel truck and it's going to bring it over to load it. All right, so you want to do fuel first, let it take care of the fuel, and then do your boarding, your cargo and your passenger boarding. Now, what about these numbers though? If you use the A330 fuel planner, which I highly recommend you use this, it's going to give you some different numbers. Now, first of all, if we were to just go in here, let's just delete that real quick and go wherever. Let's see what happens. So KMSP, see how it changed to 1,378 nautical miles? It was set to 1,410 because I set it there, because that's our actual air distance according to our operational flight plan. But this is a direct line, 1,378 nautical miles. It does not account for a SID or a star. All right? So that already is going to change our fuel. But we know that our trip distance is actually 1,410. So type that in, 1,410. Now look at your fuel. It's going to change as soon as I click to another box. Look at that, 66,520. Our planned flight level is flight level 390. When you first pull this up, it's probably going to have a lower flight level. Keep that in mind. I changed the taxi time to 30 minutes. It was at 20. APU time is good. Alternate is nowhere near that far. Our alternate is probably less than 100 nautical miles. So let me change that. That brought our fuel down by 5,000 pounds. That's a big difference, right? Holding fuel, hopefully we don't need to hold more than 20 minutes. Contingency fuel is going to show up probably as 30 minutes. Now, for ICAO rules, it's supposed to be 45 minutes. You're supposed to be able to fly to your destination and an additional 45 minutes. That's what contingency fuel is. Final reserve, it had a different final reserve. I put in our final reserve, which is supposed to be 5,090 pounds. And then if you want, you can put in the wind speed and direction as well, and all of those things are going to go into the amount of fuel that's being used, right? Fair enough. Now, what about packs and cargo? If I can adjust this. So let's take this down to around 2,200, 2,352, and you see it's 60,729 pounds. But when you adjust the packs, it automatically adjusts the cargo, right? And so it's basing that on, basically it's considering luggage is what it's doing. So what I like to do is put it at the packs that we're going to be flying. It's 292 out of a total of 300, and that puts our cargo at 16,093 pounds. That's the cargo that I'm going to fly with. Now I can also adjust the center of gravity without changing these numbers. So for example, if I put it way back here, you can see it says the trim needs to be up 4.0, right? If I put it in the middle, it says 1.9, put it all the way forward, it says 0.3. Okay, I'm going to it should be around the middle anyway. So 2.1 is good. And now we have our numbers. You can switch between kilos and pounds here. So if you're flying in Europe and you want to use kilos, by all means switch it to kilos here. All right, let's move this to the side now and let's take a look here. Oh, I forgot one thing. Once you have all this done, click on Generate Load Sheet. You just got to click it once, doesn't do anything. But what it does is it generates a load sheet for this guy. And you can do it while the sim is running. So instead of plugging all those numbers in manually, I can just click Initiate Load Sheet. There we go. So you can see there we've got 16.09 on the cargo. Look at that, 16.09, 16,093 pounds. Our fuel is at 61,512, so 61.51, and it's got 292 packs in it. That's fantastic because it makes it easy, right? Now, it also changed the trim to up 2.1, which will auto adjust when I start the engines, which is pretty cool actually. All right. Now remember what I said, load your fuel first. If you don't want to wait for it, click on it, it's going to start blinking and they're going to come over to load the fuel. You see the fuel coming up here? Okay. Now I haven't initialized GSX yet. Let's initialize that. We're going to use American Airlines obviously. Alright, that's all loading in out there. There we go. Alright, fuel truck is on its way. You see? So even though it shows it's loading fuel already, fuel truck is on its way. Alright, so keep that in mind. Start loading the fuel. And if you jump up here, you'll see here as well, the fuel is going up gradually. So it doesn't load all at once. That can take a little time. If you're in a big hurry, then just click load fuel or click load instant and it'll instantly load the fuel. We're not going to do that because we got plenty of time to spare. But what I am going to do, actually I want to wait for that fuel truck from GSX to show up. Well, no, it should work. So GSX usually won't do certain things if it's waiting on other things, right? So if I say I want to request boarding, all right, I'm going to put both of these jetways, select them both, confirm selection. It's going to attach those for us, right? So if we look over here, there they go. Fantastic. All right, and see how it started the boarding and the cargo load for us? I didn't even have to click on those. So that's when you have it integrated with GSX, that works out really well. Still waiting on the fuel truck to show up. He's going to show up. He's going to park right here, and then they'll hang out for however long. There he is right there. Notice that the cargo loaders, as he drives right through one, haven't pulled up to the side of the aircraft yet. My throat is driving me nuts. The reason they haven't pulled up to the side of the aircraft is they're waiting for the fuel to load. Now, I don't know how long he's going to hang out. My guess is he's going to hang out until the aircraft says it's done loading fuel. All right. So that gets us all set up there so that we've got our packs loading, we've got our fuel loading, and we've got it done according to this, even though it's a little bit different than our flight plan. I would highly recommend you go with the numbers you get from here because this is made specifically for this simulator aircraft, whereas what we have on SimBrief, while probably really relatively accurate for real-world operations, is not necessarily accurate for the simulation. Okay. Last thing about this, leave it open and on another screen or minimized until you're all done and you're about ready to push back, because you're going to want to use some of these numbers. Now, to be fair, you can get the numbers from here as well if you prefer to do that, but it's just a little easier to read them off of your fuel planner. All right, so that takes care of getting our payload and fuel set up. All right, so if we had passengers loading right now, you'd be able to hear them. They're not loading yet because they're waiting on the fuel, and that's a GSX thing. Now we can, oh, there they are. So the fuel truck's probably gone. Let's take a look. Nope, he's still there, but they're loading packs anyway. Okay, well, it is what it is. Now we can take care of our preliminary cockpit preparation checklist. So if we jump over here, you can see here's our preliminary cockpit preparation, including FMS preparation and then the cockpit preparation, which for us are going to be two different checklists anyway. All right, so you've got the checklist available to you here. Now, the first thing it's got on my checklist is to start the APU. We're not going to do that. I don't run the APU until we're getting ready to push back, because that's good practice for fuel saving and it's better for the environment. That's the way they do it in the real world. I know, it's a simulator. It's not really doing anything to the environment, but trying to keep it as realistic as possible, it's a good practice, right? Okay, so the ECAM is on. We're not starting up the APU right now. I'll show you how to do that when the time comes. we want to make sure that our parking brake is set, which I know for a fact it's not. So click the parking brake on, easy days. And then it wants us to check the brake pressure indicator, which is going to be this guy right here. Now, I don't know what it's supposed to read. Again, this is one of those areas where a manual on the aircraft is very helpful. Now again, Aerosoft, I think I mentioned this before, but if I didn't, Aerosoft has said on their forums and so on that getting the FCOMs for this aircraft is very easy. Just type in FCOM Airbus A330 and you can find them all over the internet. So I get that. But much like my complaint about the Milviz King Air 350, you charged me $70 for this aircraft. I think you should have a full manual with it. I think it should have a manual that tells me everything I need to know about the aircraft. I just think that's the right way to do business. But I'm not going to go into a big long rant about that here. As far as I know, our brake pressure is good. All right, we want to make sure that our flat position matches on here, which is 0, and down here, which is also 0. We also want to jump over to this side and make sure that our speed brake is all the way down. All right, so that would be up, that's down, or fully retracted is another way of looking at it. It wants us to check our hydraulics on here, which is all well and good, but again, it tells me to check for abnormal indications. Well, I'm going to have to go and download an FCOM for this thing and read through, you know, all those pages to figure out what that is, and I'm not going to do that. Same thing for the engines page. Look for abnormal indications. There's nothing on there right now, so I don't know what would be abnormal anyway. And then it says APU bleed is as required. Well, it's not required right now because we don't have the APU turned on. Same thing with the cross bleed. We'll get to all that when we start the APU, which is pretty straightforward. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your preliminary cockpit preparation checklist. And not surprisingly, that's going to take us directly into our cockpit preparation. Again, jumping over here, you can scroll down on your charts here, maybe. There we go. Sometimes, see, I can't even see the little bar that you're supposed to see on there. There it is. Now you can see it, but you can barely see the checklist. It's a little, I don't know. I think they could have done a much better job with this EFB, in my opinion. But here's our cockpit preparation checklist. And again, you're supposed to be able to use the mouse wheel to scroll, but all of a sudden that's not working for me. I can't use the mouse wheel to scroll. So there it is. We've got one in our hands that we're going to be using, so let's get right to it. First things first, we want to align the IRS. Jump all the way up top here. Now again, this is where a manual would be helpful, but let me tell you what I've been doing that works just fine. Right click each one of these one time. You'll see it say on bat, and then it'll go off. And then I right click them from this side back all the way over to ATT. I have no idea what it means, I got to be honest with you. But I just do that and then click them back to nav, and it seems to work just fine on aligning the IRS. So when we jump down here, we can see that our nav display and our primary flight display, they have all red all over them. That's because the IRS isn't aligned. Now to complete the alignment process, you need to come down here, click on FM1, make sure your nav data is up to date, we're on the proper AIRAC cycle, press the initialization button. It's not the init button. Okay, init is short for initialization. I don't know why, that just drives me nuts. People say press the perf button. It's the performance button. Press initialization. Now, as I get ready to initialize this, I want you to know, because I saved this flight plan, it is going to automatically load the company route for me. That's just the way it's been doing it. I don't know why. So I will talk about how to put in waypoints. It's really simple anyway. But we're going KSFO / because that's the format here, right? / KMSP. There we go. Put that in there. That's what we want. You can now see, look here. It's got a runway designator. It's got the truck and 2 out to Orca and so on, right? Why does it have all that? Because that's the flight plan that I saved. Okay? So it's automatically going to put it in there for me. The Torgy 3 and runway 12, that's for our arrival. So we're going to click insert. Please wait. And there you go. So see, it's got the company route in there. Now another way of doing that is you can just type in the format for the company route. So I could have typed in KSFO KMSP and put it in there. It would have done the same thing. What we want to do here is initialize the IRS. So click IRS initialization. Okay. This is the airport we're at. This is what we want to reference off of. So we're going to align on that reference, confirm it, and now it's going to start the initialization process. You can see it's still in red here, and it's going to stay in red until it's done initializing. When it's done, GPS primary lost, that warning will go away. These will no longer be red, nor will the heading or anything else down here. Okay? Now, we're going to take care of our GPWS test. You're going to click this button. That's right, I had to look around for it because it's not even labeled. And in the documentation provided by Aerosoft, this button is not pointed out. Alright, but I found it. So you're going to click on this and you're going to get your glide slope and terrain warnings, your audible warnings. But you're also looking up here for a fault light on these two indicators right here, on the terrain and system indicator. Okay, so you got to do both of those. So we're going to click the button and listen, and we're going to look.
Glide slope. Pull up. Terrain. Pull up.
There you go. So that's the test complete. You saw the fault lights, you saw the lights on here, and then of course you heard all of the warnings. All right, PFD and nav display, check for abnormal indications. You can't check for anything right now because it's still aligning. Barrel reference needs to be checked. So it's on the QNH. We want to switch both sides over to inches of mercury unless you're flying in Europe. My brain doesn't want to function. Let me just refresh my active sky over here real quick. Check my METAR, and it's still saying 29 or 9 or 1. I honestly don't believe that it's 29 or 9 or 1. So let me pop this up. Go to conditions. Let's go KSFO. And the reason I don't believe it is because that was several hours ago, and I had to go do some stuff. Yeah, this says 29 or 9 or 3. So I don't know why it's not updating quicker. Anyway, 299 or 3 is what we're looking for. So you're going to put that on both of these, and you're going to put it on this guy down here. Okay, that was 4, that's 3. There we go. All right, make sure the flight director's on. So this is one of the things I kind of dislike about this, and I think it has to do with frame rates and keeping the frame rates up higher, but you really can't read anything on here except the numbers from, you know, basically your pilot's view. You just have to know which is which. You can kind of tell what they say, but they're not nice and clear like they are when you zoom in. I think that has to do with increasing frame rates. I think that's probably the way they did it. That's just a guess. But it'd be nice if from this view I could clearly read all of these, but I can't. I don't know why that is. But anyway, we're going to zoom in here just a little bit. We want to make sure our flight directors are both on, left and right. All right. Oh, I got the hiccups, guys. Nav display, we've got it set on the arc mode. We're going to leave it there. And the range for now is going to be set to 10. All right. On this guy, this is called the FCU. It's called the MCP in a Boeing aircraft. They call it an FCU in here. So a couple things we want to check. These should all be dashed lines. We set the altitude to whatever our first cleared altitude is. So if you right-click, my brain went blank for a second. Right-click the black part of the knob back here, or left-click it to switch it between 100 and 1,000. If I got to go up to 40,000, going 100 feet at a time, I'm going to be here scrolling for a while, right? But if I right-click it to 1,000, now look, it's going to go a lot quicker, right? Okay, and we're going up 390. That may change. I haven't looked at our departure briefing yet. You can also change between this heading track, vertical speed, FPA. All right, and that's just changing how it's tracking. You see those just popped in. That means our IRS alignment is complete. Okay, so there we have it. Pretty straightforward. We want to check our standby ASI. That's this guy right here. With the check the altitude, the horizon, make sure that the barrel is set and all of that. Anti-skid and nose wheel steering. That's this guy down here. You're going to make sure it's on, which it is. We're not doing anything with the radio control panel right now, but you would set your frequencies at this point. We do want to make sure that our thrust levers are set to idle. Now keep in mind that this is, if I remember correctly, it's still a FADEC system. And the way it works is you've got notches. Hear the click? That's climb, that's flex, that's toga, right? Flex, climb, and then that's free, right? Okay, so just keep that in mind. A lot of folks have some issues with calibrating and setting up the throttles. I did not, but if you do, just go on the Aerosoft forums, type it in. Trust me, there's plenty of information on it. Alright, moving on. Engine master switch, engine mode selector, that's these guys. We checked those already, they're good. Transponder should be on standby, that's this guy over here. It is. We'll put in 2336, just type it in and you're good to go. And the parking brake is on. The external lights, strobe should be on auto. Okay, so the way these work, forward is off and backward is on. I don't know why that is. That's just the way Airbus is set up. So some of them you got to right click to come backwards, and some of them you got to left click. Strobe goes on auto, give it a left click, and you're good to go. Beacon light should be off, which it is. And wing, nav, runway turn off, landing, and nose lights should all be in the off position right now. So we're good on all those. Seatbelt signs need to go on, left click it twice, and then no portable electronic devices, put that to auto. And what else? Emergency exit light needs to be armed, left click it, that arms it. Cabin pressure and landing elevation needs to be auto, that's this guy right here. It's at the 12 o'clock auto position. I don't know why I'm getting that little spinny thing all of a sudden. Fuel pumps all need to come on at this point. So again, dark cockpit concept, there's a light on, that means we need to address it. Now the lights go off, but the pumps are on. Notice that our on light is still on for the external power because it's a temporary, that's what that blue is. Fault lights, they're yellow, and that's telling us that it's something that needs to be addressed, but we don't do anything with them right now. We've got them because we don't have APU or engines turned on. Making sense to everybody? I hope it is. Alright, at this point, we would get our takeoff data form, which we've already got in the form of our operational flight plan, and that's going to take us into our MCDU setup. Now, if you're a Boeing fan, we tend to call this thing an FMC. If you're an Airbus fan, it's usually called an FMS. Technically, on the Boeing, it's called the CDU, or what is it? Control Display Unit, I think. And then on the Airbus, it's called the MCDU, which I have no idea what that means. Probably multiple control display unit. I don't know. But anyway, it's this guy right here, most commonly referred to as an FMC or FMS in the flight simulator community. Now, it's not hard to set this guy up. We've already done our initialization for our IRS. We do want to put our flight number in there, and I believe it was 389. I thought my wife was back there. She's blowing on my neck right now. I don't know why she does that, because I don't hear her come in, so she blows on my neck. Hey, you want to give this briefing, hon? She doesn't want to give this briefing, so I'll be back in just a second, guys. All right, let's press on here. So we've got, let's see, where was I? I have to think for a second now. So it automatically put in my flight plan. I think I already mentioned that. We can put our flight number in here, which that's what I was looking up. Our flight number is 389. So it's American Airlines AAL 389. Put that in here. Our cost index will be 85. And then our cruise is, our flight level is 390. And it'll automatically do the flex to temp. And it's going to be minus 63. Alright, so that's page 1. Now we're going to come back and we're going to have to do page 2. But for the moment, let's go to our performance page. Excuse me, not our performance page, our flight plan page. Now our flight plan is already in there, again, because I saved it to the appropriate folder. But I just want to make sure you guys know it's really not difficult. Oh, I got the hiccups. To put in a flight plan here. When you put in on your initialization page, assuming you didn't have a saved route like I did, when you put this in, you get everything all set up, okay? When you come to your flight plan page, it's going to say KSFO without a runway. It's going to say, it's going to probably have 2 or 3 lines, say discontinuity, and then it's going to say KMSP without a runway. And that's going to be it, all right? To set up your departure, you're going to click on KSFO, select departure. You're going to choose your runway, all right? And then once you choose your runway, and I'll just pick one here, and then you're going to choose your departure, just like that. And then you would hit temporary, that's what that is, temporary insert. We're not going to do that, all right? Instead, we're just going to go back to, well, we got to go erase. So go back to flight plan, then go erase, because I don't want to change it. It's the same thing for your arrival. You click on KMSP, you click on arrival, you choose your runway, you choose your approach, and then you click here, and that'll put them in, okay? It's really very simple. If you want to, let's say you did that, you got your trucking to departure in there, but you don't have any waypoints now. Okay, these are very simple. You would have KSFO 28 right, 520 trucking for trucking 2. Once you went through and chose your departure and your runway, you'd have all that in there, and then you'd have a line that said flight plan discontinuity, and then you'd have KMSP, or you'd have the arrival and KMSP if you'd done your arrival. That's what would show up. If you wanted to put in your waypoints, you just type them in and you put them where it says flight plan discontinuity. So we would type in ORRCA, we'd click on that blank spot, which I'm sure there's one down here, so you'd click on one of these, the next one in order, alright? And then you just go on down the list. It's very simple, alright? Matter of fact, if I remember correctly, let me look over here. So on the trucking 2, it's got us going out to trucking. Between trucking and Orca, there's another waypoint called hyping. So I can add that in there. I can just go, it's HYPEE. Okay, and I want that to come before Orca, so I'm going to click right here, and it put it in, and look, and it just moved Orca down. It didn't change anything else. Alright, it's really simple to put in waypoints. There's no difficulty in this at all. Okay, that's your wind information. If you want to put in your wind information, just click the right arrow. Okay, click it again or click the left arrow to go back, doesn't matter. To scroll up and down, the way this works is if you want to go down the list, you got to scroll the list up. Think about it like using an iPad. You would swipe your finger up to move down on the page. That's what you're doing on here. Alright, and then you see there between S1 or S1 or just Swan, I don't know what it is, you've got a flight plan discontinuity, right? Now, if I want to go direct from Swan to Torgy without any issues, I can just remove that. But let's make sure, let's go here real quick, alright, and let's put this on plan mode, alright? So there's Swan right there, right? Let me go back up. There's DDY right here, right? Then Swan, and we're at 10, so let's zoom it out. Zoom it out to 80. There you go. So you can see from Swan over to Torgy, there's a direct line there. It's just a long distance. Okay, so I can easily connect those two without any issues. Put that back on ARC. We'll hop back down here. How do I connect those two? Well, the easy way to do it is hit clear and remove the flight plan discontinuity by clearing it out. Then you have to go with temporary insert. If you don't like that, hit erase. It'll go back to the way it was. All right. But we're going to insert it. So click that, and there. Now it's connected. So here's the deal. When it says flight plan discontinuity, you can remove it by hitting the clear button, except when the waypoint before the discontinuity says manual. If it says manual, that's the same as having vectors on a Boeing aircraft. If you try to remove it with a manual, when it says, so if this said manual, you couldn't remove this. You would have to remove manual, then remove the discontinuity. Alright? Hopefully that makes sense. It's pretty straightforward and it's pretty easy. If you guys have any questions about that, feel free to put it down in the comments, and if I need to explain it better, I most certainly will. Alright, moving on. Now we can go, now that our flight plan's set up, we can go to our performance page. Alright? Now, we know that we're going to be up 2.1 on the trim because that's what our fuel planner set it at, and we like that. We're going to go flaps 1, and we're still going to put slash up 2.1. The reason we're going to do that is twofold. Number one, it makes sure that everything goes in there properly, and number two, if for any reason this isn't in there, if you don't put come on, brain work. If you don't put the flap setting slash trim setting, it won't take it. Alright, so we put it in there. As soon as we do, you see V speeds popped up. 135, 135, 143. Now watch this. Go over here. Calculations. 139, 139, 146. They're not the same. I don't even know what this is for. Where is it getting its information from? Why does it show up sometimes and sometimes it doesn't? I have no idea, and I can't find any information on it. So just use this function, and there you go. If you need to change your, so you see the flex 2 temp is 54. That's going to be our it's flex takeoff temp is what it is. That is our D rate is what it is. All right. In other words, that's the same thing as doing a derated takeoff in a Boeing aircraft. Okay, now there's one last thing that we need to do here. We need to go back to our initialization page and click the right arrow. And you can see we've got all this information we need to fill in here. And I believe I kept that thing. Oh, there's another hiccup. Kept that thing up. All right, so remember I told you you're going to need your zero fuel weight and stuff off of here. This is where you need it at. Don't forget to put this in or it's going to give you a problem when you go to start the engines. All right. So, two ways you can do this. You can just click on it and it'll put the information down here, or you can type in the information that's on your fuel planner. I usually prefer to type it in, but either one works just fine. All right, you can also do fuel planning from here, but we don't need to. Same thing for block fuel. You can click on it, you can put it in there, and then you're good to go. Now your FMC or your MCDU or FMS or whatever you want to call it, setup is complete. We'll put this back on our performance page so that we have our V2 speed readily available and we're good. Alright, so now that the MCDU is all set up, our flight plan's all in there and ready to go, the last thing we need to do here, actually a couple of things real quick, because I want to go up here and based on what my departure says, so I'm just looking over here, I've got an adder above 3,000 and I've got I don't have any maximum altitudes. I've only got minimum altitudes on my departure. So I'm going to set that to 390 and leave it. And then I'm not going to mess with any of this other stuff. Now I always mess this up a little bit and you'll probably see it on departure. When you push the button or left click the button, that gives the command to the aircraft. All right, so that the flight management system manages that function like speed or heading or whatever. When you right click it, it pulls on the knob and that's for you to take over. So if I right click this while we're in flight, then I can change what the speed is. If I left click it, then the flight management system will take care of it for you. Alright, so once we've set up our what is it called again? FCU. I have to actually look on the checklist. It's called the FCU, I'm sure of that. But anyway, once we finish setting this up, last couple things, we want to check our fuel quantity, 61,510. That's where we want to be. Why does it say nav barrel value disagree? Because they do disagree. This one's 29904 and this one's 29903. It's supposed to be 29903, right? There we go. All right, that takes care of that warning. Pre-flight briefing is what we need to do next. So, taking a look at our Sim Toolkit Pro, absolutely love this program, guys. If you don't have it, trust me, it's worth it because it's free. So if you don't like it, you just get rid of it. It doesn't cost you anything. Go check it out, Sim Toolkit Pro. I'm not getting paid to say that either. We're over here at gate Alpha 11. That's the only reason I pulled up this chart, to show that to you. Take a look at our airport chart here on our briefing strip. ATIS is on any one of these three frequencies. San Francisco clearance on 18.2 and ground is on 21.8. Towers on 20.5, and then we're departing to the east, so 120.9 is going to be our departure. We're over here at the A terminal. We're going to push back over here when we taxi out, because we're scheduled, I believe it was for runway 28 right. Let's verify real quick, because for some reason I can't remember all of a sudden. So go to your flight plan, and there you go, KSFO 28 right. So yeah, that's what we're scheduled for. We'll put that back on the performance page. There we go. So we want to go over here to 28 right. Here's the skinny on this, okay? First of all, we want to pay attention. We're going to be coming through here. So there's a hot spot here. It's because there's all these different changes. And we do have the flight beam add-on. So there's a lot of craziness right here. But we're going to taxi down Alpha here to Foxtrot. And then we're going to cross over 19 right, 1 left. Over 19 left, 1 right. And down here to Papa. And then we're going to cross over 28 left and 28 right. And the reason we're going to do that, because we could avoid crossing 28 right by holding short here, but it's probably not a good idea to have a giant aircraft holding short in between two runways. So we'll cross all the way over to Charlie, and then we're going to come down. We're going to hold short down here at Charlie. Now, let's take a look at this departure. So the departure is pretty straightforward. Easiest way to go over it is with your text briefing over here. We're climbing on heading 284 to 520 feet and then and at or below 210 knots. And that's actually a notation up here. We'll get to that in a sec. And then it's a right turn direct to trucking. Okay, and you can see how that looks here. So up to 520 feet, you cannot exceed 210 knots. It's a speed restriction until you get over 520 feet. And once you do, you make a right turn all the way around to trucking. Now for us, originally it was from trucking direct to Orca, but remember we put Hype in there as well, just to show you how to add in a waypoint, which is pretty easy and straightforward. And that's it. Transition altitude at 18,000 feet. NorCal departures on 120.9. And that is your taxi and departure briefing. Any questions? No, there's not. How many of you did I get with that, though? Alrighty, so now we are ready to push and start. And just so that you know that Captain Mac has problems with his simulator just like you do, I had to restart the whole thing. Alright, and this was because of an error on my part, but nonetheless, I had to restart the whole thing. So, anyway, what I want to show you here real quick, if you jump all the way back here, you see this guy right here? Look at that. That's your load sheet. Left click it. Oh, it disappeared. It's up here. Left click it again and it shows it to you. So this is your load sheet here. You got your zero fuel weight, your takeoff weight, your zero fuel weight center of gravity, landing weight, packs weight, all of that good stuff is all on here. More pages if they're available, and then once you're done, right click it and it goes away permanently. We are now ready to push and start. Let me fire GSX back up here because it was gone, and prepare for pushback and departure. It's going to be American Airlines still, and we'll give them a second to get fired up out there. And while they do that, let's talk real quick about the engine start. It's very simple. All you're going to do, he'll be talking here in a second. All you need to do is you need to right click this guy over to this side. I forget what it actually says. Right click to ignition start, and then you're going to left click engine 2 because that's the engine we're going to start first.
Hello, Captain. We're ready for pushback.
Good for you. Okay, we're going to be looking for a few things on here. Some of them are readily noticeable, some of them aren't. Doesn't really matter. Basically, the start valves will open, bleed pressure should indicate green, oil pressure will rise, N2, which is going to be down here, will increase to 16%, and then it says igniter A or B. You don't do anything, so I don't know what it means by that. N2 will then increase to 22%, fuel flow will increase, exhaust gas temperature will rise, N1 will increase, and then at 50% N2, you're supposed to close, the start valve closes, and then the igniter off. Okay, that's a whole lot of talky talk. Basically, we're going to use the auto-saved quick edit.
Departure check completed. Bypass pin inserted. Release parking brakes.
There we go.
Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will.
Once we get to that point where the N2 is not going up anymore, we're just going to put this back to normal, and that completes the engine startup process. So very, very simple. So here we go. We're going to right click, left click, and then if you look up here, there you go. So you can see the N2's coming up. The exhaust gas temperature will start to come up pretty soon as well. N1 will take a little bit longer. You can see the oil pressure has come up into the green, and so on and so forth. So pretty straightforward. So it's doing everything itself right now. We're not doing anything. Now the N2, as far as I've seen, has never quite made it to 50%. Keep in mind though that the list that I'm looking at here, the normal procedure guide, actually comes, even though this is the one that came with this aircraft, it actually comes from the A320 Professional Series. I think at the very least, they could have gone through this, Aerosoft could have gone through this and made the changes where necessary. But you see how the N2 is going back down now? At that point, I just hop back here and I put this back on normal, and then the engine will finish its startup procedure. And once the N1, which is right here, it'll stabilize. Now it's supposed. Now here's the deal. Coughing in your face there. There's the deal. All right. So again, it's got engine idle parameters on here for sea level, which we're at sea level. All right. But these are for the A320 series. So for the A320 series, you'd be looking for 19.5% on the N1, 390 on the exhaust gas temperature, and so on. Ours are all different, mostly higher. And that's probably because we have different engines on the aircraft, because it's an A330, not an A320. Just saying, I think we could have done a better job with that. All right, so our pushback is done. Let's set the parking brake. Right-click this over here again. Left-click this guy. And if you jump back up here, you'll see all the same stuff happening. All right, so we'll let that finish up there and get that out of the way. And then once that's done, we can confirm our good engine start. And that's a feature you can turn off with GSX. I just haven't bothered to. All right, so we're really mostly waiting for the N2. The N2 is going to get to a point, it's going to get to like 45 something. It'll start coming back down. I want you to see the trim moving. Okay, it's going to move to 2.1 up on its own. I'm not doing that. It's doing that on its own. I don't know if that's a real feature of the aircraft or what, but it's kind of crazy that it does that in my opinion. But the trim will be set automatically, so there you have it. All right, and you can see, so this is still coming up a little bit. All right, there you go, 44, 45, and now it'll start to go back down. See that? That's when I just turn this back to normal. And the engine will complete its own startup, and that takes care of, well, no, first we need to tell them good engine start. There we go, they'll disconnect, and that takes care of our push and start. Alright, so like I mentioned right before we did the push and start, I had to restart the sim primarily because of an error that I made. But you remember at the start of this video where I told you before you start up your sim, if you want to use charts in your EFB, make sure that you open up your configurator and log in? You remember that, right? That's why. It's just stupid to me. It's absolutely freaking stupid that I gotta log into that thing every stinking time. I turned it off, I turned it right back on. Why is it logged out? It's a good thing I don't use the EFB for charts, or I'd actually be really annoyed by that. That's just retarded. Alright? There's no reason for that to keep logging out. And now, listen, I try not to bash on companies, and I'm not bashing on Aerosoft. They put together some great products, but I am going to say this. If you go to their support forums and you tell them about this, which I'm sure somebody has already, I already know what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, just make sure you log in. We don't know what the problem is. There's no reason it should be doing that, or we can't figure out why, or whatever. You know what? I'm just tired of it. $70 for this freaking aircraft. $70 US. That's a lot of freaking money paid for this aircraft for such a stupid little thing to keep popping up like that. Wouldn't you guys agree? I'm sure you would. Okay, rant over. Let's go to our after start checklist. Okay, so again, this is going to be a little bit different, only slightly different than what I'm looking at on my paper here, but I just wanted to show it to you guys, try and make it a habit. And I wanted to show you the retardedness of having to re-log in. So just remember, if you want to use charts on the EFB, do not forget to open your configurator and make sure you're still logged into NAVIGRAPH, or you're going to have to shut down the sim and do it all over again. And I didn't even bother to look at the EFB until after we did our push and start. So now if I wanted to use charts on that EFB, guess what? I got to shut down the sim. I got to go through the entire pre-flight process again. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it just annoys me. Okay, moving on. APU bleed off. Let's start by turning that off. Ground spoilers need to be armed. This is down here. So I just have quick keys, shift and the slash key, and that arms it. But if you don't have that, you can just right click it and that'll arm it as well. Flaps need to be set to 1 for takeoff. We know the trim has already set itself, which is fantastic. So that's good. ECAM status, we're good. APU master switch can go off now. So we jump up here, we can click that guy to turn off. Now here's the deal. I want you to take this in real quick. Okay. See, I turned it off, right? But it shows the flap open and it still shows 100%. I'm going to leave that up while I continue to go through this checklist. It takes forever to shut back down. It will shut down though, I promise. Alright, moving on. Engine anti-ice as required. We don't need it. We don't need wing anti-ice. We do want to check our doors page real quick, so we'll hop back down here. You can see it's starting to come down a little bit. Doors page, just verifying that all our doors are closed and locked, which they are. I'll go back to the APU page for now. Ground crew is out of the way, and then our after start checklist itself. So that's the procedures or the flows. Then you have the checklist. APU as required, anti-ice is required, ECAM status is checked, flaps are set to 1, spoiler is armed, pitch and rudder trim is at 0, and we have received the hand signal. And after all of that, the APU is still trying to turn itself off, but that takes care of our after start checklist. Okay, moving right along, and as you can see, the APU is finally starting to wind down there. The flap will close itself, but now we need to take a look at our taxi here. And we've already done the taxi brief, and here's your taxi flows. So I'll just let you guys look at those for a second, and then we'll start going through them here. And again, really, I've got a paper checklist, so that's really for you guys. All right. So external lights are as required. We want the nose light to be on taxi. Runway turnoff lights can be on. The beacon is supposed to be on, but it wasn't because of me. Strobe stays on auto. Nav lights are on at this point, and so we're good with our external light. You can see all of my switches because I had to restart. So no portable electronic devices goes on now. That was already armed, so that's nice. We never did the annunciator light test, did we? So if you click that up there, it's not even on any of the checklists, but you can see there's a lot of lights that come on. So it's probably a really good thing that they do a dark cockpit concept, because I mean, look at all of it. Could you imagine having all this stuff on? Oh man, that'd drive you nuts, wouldn't it? Okay, we'll turn those back to the dim setting there. We've already checked our taxi area. Our clock, or our chrono, is supposed to be started at this point here. Let's see, and then the rest of this really is just how to perform the taxi. One thing to keep in mind with this aircraft, when I release the parking brakes, I'm not going to have to add any thrust. It's going to go on its own. It does that every single time. All right. Isn't the we need to do, let's see. So it wants us to do the parking or the brake check and the flight controls check after we start taxiing, but that doesn't work well for us in the sim. So let's jump down here and let's go to flight controls and let's do our test real quick. So there's full left, full right, and neutral, and then all the way up, all the way down, and neutral, and then full left on the rudder and full right on the rudder and back to neutral. Alright, and then if you jump back real quick to your APU page, you can finally see she's shut down. So we'll go to the takeoff page there, and then we're not going to do the brake check as we pull out. And I'm just double checking. Looks like we've got everything else good to go on here, which means we can go ahead and start our taxi track. Oh, I got radio speaking in my ear again. There we go. Let me just turn that to like something random. Hopefully that's not a frequency. There is an ATC program that I've started using called POSCON. It's actually a multiplayer type program. It lets you interact with your friends and stuff and see their aircraft in the sim, and it's really fantastic. It's still in beta, so I don't even know if I can show videos on it yet. I'm waiting to hear back from them, but when I can, I will be flying with that. So we'll start using air traffic control finally. Okay, track hour coming on a little jump here, big jump actually. Now I have set a little knob on my throttles here that lets me do the steering, but you can just use the rudder pedals otherwise. So when I press the brake pedals, it doesn't release the parking brake in this aircraft. I'm sure that's intentional. So hold them down, release the parking brake, and then when I let off, I'm not adding any thrust right now. That's with no thrust. So here's what you need to keep in mind while taxiing with this aircraft. Riding the brakes wears them out faster than a quick application of the brakes. So that would be our brake check, right? But if we start getting up over, say, depending on where we're at, like if we're getting ready to make a turn and we're well over 10 knots, I will slow it down to about 5 knots quickly and then just let go of the brake pedals, and that will allow us to continue our taxi. All right, so we're going to start taxiing out here. I don't typically show the taxi because, well, quite frankly, my videos are long enough as it is, especially these tutorials. But you can see we're picking up speed here, and you don't want to ride the brakes, right? So ideally you would be holding the brakes here just because this thing really wants to go, but we're not going to do that. So I'm going to just finish coming around the corner here, and I'll taxi on out. See, there's the engine start point, and I will see you guys. I think I mentioned that earlier. I will see you guys when we are holding short of runway 28 right. Alright folks, as promised, here we are holding short of the runway. A couple more things we need to take care of here. First of all, let's set the auto brake, which is right here. Set it to max. Alright, and then you want to come down here and you want to hit your takeoff config button. That's this guy right here. So right here you see it says takeoff config test. We need to click on this, and then it says normal, which means we're good to go. If there was a problem, it would let us know that there's a problem. Alright, and then you get your flight instruments are checked. Takeoff briefing is done. Now before we line up, our lights are going to come on. We want our transponder to go to TARA. Now this is important. If you put this on TARA and you don't see any traffic, I got to change that again. It's because this is on standby. You need to put this on auto in order to see the traffic. All right. Engine mode selector. So when the runway has standing water, if there's heavy rain or heavy turbulence expected, you put this to ignition start. Otherwise, you leave it as is. You can also turn off the packs and the APU bleed for additional power if needed, and so on and so forth. We don't need any of that. We're going to hop back up here. We're going to get our lights on. Now, I've turned traffic off for now. And the reason I turned traffic off is because despite the wind being 310 at, let me double check it here, 310 at 13 knots, the traffic was still landing on the opposite frickin' runways. I like having AI traffic, but I hate having AI traffic. Alright, so I turned it off so that we could use the proper runway because I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. So let's go up here real quick. We don't need our logo light on. We do need our wing lights on. Runway turn-off lights can stay on. Landing lights go on. Nose lights go to takeoff. And the strobe light will go to the on position now. Seatbelt signs and all that is on. And we are good to go there. Excuse me. And that's also you've got the flight attendant in the back letting everybody know we're getting ready to go. Make sure your sliding table is stowed and your before takeoff checklist. Engine mode selector as required. Packs are on. Takeoff memo, that's these guys down here, are all green, and we are going to be using a regular takeoff mode. Let me go ahead and let's take the park and brake off. Well, track IR first, coming on, a little jump. There we go. And then let's take the park and brake off, maybe. There we go. And once again, she starts rolling forward on her own. I'm not adding any thrust here. So let's get her out and get her lined up on the runway. We're going to use a normal takeoff mode or not. We could use the flex temp. I mean, how much runway do we have? I don't recall. I got to look over here real quick. We've got 11,000 feet of runway. We're not that heavy, so we could use flex temp if we wanted. See, we're already almost at 10 knots, and I want to pull on the runway nice and slow so I can get lined up. So not being able to ride the brakes is a little frustrating. I hate that my head is buried in the seat there as well. Now that's something you can adjust. I did an adjustment for that recently on the 777, I believe it was, trying to get just a better feel for where it's at. You know what I mean? Like trying to get that just right look. Because when I look over here, I shouldn't be seeing that seat. Right. I should have a clear view. And let me show you what I'm talking about here real quick. Might as well do it real fast. All right, finish getting her lined up here. Bring her to a stop. And I'll just hold the brakes for a second. Track IR coming off. So ideally, really what it should be, maybe if it lets me move. There we go. Alright, so it should be more like right there and probably zoomed out just a hair more. That's probably more realistic. So if I turn the track IR on, see, that's where your head would be. The only problem is you really can't see the instruments very well from there. You know what I mean? Like you have to look down to see them, and I don't like that. So what I end up doing is I zoom it in just a little bit more, and I move that head view back to compensate so that I can see the instruments better, right? So when I do that, the track IR comes back on there. Now you can see my head is in the seat, right? So I got, sorry, you gotta look down. Turn that track IR back off. So ideally it's right about there, give or take just a little bit, and then you can also or I can just reset it to where it was initially. So right there, track IR coming on, enough playing around with that. Let's use the flex temp mode. So we're going to run it up 2 clicks, and it's going to tell us on here as well. So we'll run it up to the climb first. There's that climb, and then there's flex. See? It says manual flex 54 right there. So we're about to find out if that's enough. 143 is our rotates, or is our V2. I think we've got enough runway to do it. Oh yeah. Coming up on V1. There's V1. Rotate. Just pull gently back on the stick. Hold her at about 10 degrees nose up. There she goes. Positive rate of climb. Gear coming up. Stick with your flight director. Now this thing moves really easy, and it can be troublesome on landing. I can tell you that right now. And we're above 520. We're starting our turn. Just roll into it nice and gentle. Overshot it just a little there. She's kind of squirrely on the controls in my opinion. You got to really be gentle with the stick. Otherwise you're just kind of all over the place. Looking good so far though. Just following the flight director, guys. Now it says, see how it's flashing lower climb? Bring it back until it says thrust climb. Stick with your flight director. Should have us start bringing the nose down a little here shortly. Be rolling out of our turn here in just a second. It is an easy airplane to fly, but if you're too hard on your controls, it is not easy to land. There she goes. Overshot it just a little bit. You just don't want to be too hard or too fast on your controls, guys. Trust me on this. Okay, let's bring that nose down a little bit. She's still climbing pretty fast. See how our flight director, our vertical part of our flight director is moving with us? Alright, so that's on us, right? There's no specific climb gradient. Now here's where we're going to start seeing an issue though. Watch this. First of all, let's get above that slat setting there. Let our speed start to increase. Bring that up. Now, let's turn the track car off. A little jump. There it is. Now watch this. All of this should be set to control by the autopilot. Let's hit autopilot. And now a lot of what I've had happen is the climb will go absolutely freaking crazy on me. Let's see if it does it here. See, it's climbing pretty quick. But let's see how it does on the speed and stuff. You gotta watch it close because I've had some issues with it where it overshoots everything like crazy. Like it's climbing fast right now. Alright, let's zoom that out just a little bit there. I just want to, before we do our after takeoff checklist, I just want to make sure everything's good to go. Up through 5,000. Yeah, see, she's climbing so fast, 3,700 feet per minute right now. Why? Right? So push that, and you notice that the vertical speed thing went away. And now watch, look. Now all of a sudden it's coming back down a little bit. You see where I'm coming from there? So you got to make sure, remember, you push it to send the control to the aircraft. You pull it to take control from the aircraft. Alright, so now it should start to climb a little faster to maintain that speed. So it should be on a VNAV climb setting, or a VNAV speed setting is what it should be on. And that's what it's doing now. So you got to watch that closely or it'll get the better of you. Go ahead and right click, or left click, I'm sorry, to unarm the spoilers. Auto brakes automatically turn themselves off. And let me get to the proper checklist here. Don't forget, you still have your checklist available over here. You can go to your climb checklist. Here is the same. That's your after takeoff checklist or your climb checklist. They're the same thing. APU bleed is already off. APU master is off. Engine mode selector as required. So keep in mind, if we had heavy rain or something, we would have that on ignition. We turn that back to normal at this point, most likely. Engine mode selector, we just did that as required. Anti-ice as required. Seatbelts as required. We're going to leave those as they are. Until we get above 18,000 feet, the barrels are going to stay where they are as well. It says complete the after takeoff checklist. Engine mode selector as required. Spoilers are disarmed. Flaps are retracted. Landing gear is up and the lights are out. Exterior lights retracted once we get above 10,000 feet, which will be here momentarily. So we'll just go ahead and take care of them real quick. So you just come up here and remember it's the opposite, so it's off is forward. So turn that one off there. The rest of the lights look good. Packs are on. Altimeter to standard above 18,000, and that means, ladies and gentlemen, finally, that's right, you guessed it, it is time for some of that obligatory elevator music. Alrighty folks, we are a little over 100 miles from our top of descent, and we've got some work to do obviously. Now, first things first, normally you would have, see we're zoomed out, this is the 80 nautical mile ring, and since we're only a little over 100 miles from top of descent, you should see the little down arrow looking deal on here for the top of descent. However, it's not there because I messed up. Basically, I started the descent earlier by accident and descended a couple thousand feet before getting things squared away because, you know, sometimes I'm an idiot. And so it put it in the descent mode, and so now it's stuck in descent mode. What I mean by that is if you go down here and go to performance, it's in the descent mode even though we're still cruising. So what we've done is we've done a traditional, if you will, general top of descent calculation, and that tells us we need to start descending at about 108 nautical miles from the airport, and you can see right here we're 207 nautical miles out. So that's what we're going to go with for our top of descent. We're just going to see how it works out, but just keep in mind that typically with any Airbus you will have the little, it's like a dash and then it's pointed down. I'm sorry, it's is that right? Dash and then pointed down, or is it? Yeah, it's a dash and then pointed down, or something like. Anyway, it's something marked on here that tells you it's time for your top of descent. So, my bad. Anyway, moving on. What we need to do for our descent preparation here, we got to take care of our landing information, which I did earlier because I messed that up too. But if you go to your performance page and you go to your approach phase by clicking next phase. So normally you won't be on the descent phase, you'll be on the cruise phase. So you'll have to go next phase would take you here, and then hit it again, it'll take you to approach. You need to put in your altimeter setting, so 2981, and let me just double check, but that probably still holds true. So we'll just verify that here. So we're looking at, it's 2980 now. So you type in 29.80, you put it in there. The temperature is 31 still, and then the wind is 150 at 15, gusting to 28. So that's nice. So we're going to go 150, and because this doesn't give me any options for gusting, I'm going to put it kind of in the middle there. So it's 15 gusting to almost 30, so we'll just put it at 19. Alright, so there's your format. So there it is, and that gives us our wind, and that gives us our approach speed, and so on. It's going to be the ILS 12 right approach for us. We'll brief that here in a couple of minutes, and we're going to do full flaps. Now you could change it to flaps 3, and you'll see that changes your approach to 140 and your VLS to 134, which is probably a good idea considering the wind, right? So if we go full, it's 138 and 132. But when it's really windy, less flaps is a better option, and it's really only 2 knots faster, so who cares? Stick with it, right? Okay, what else we need to do here? We need to take care of our nav radio. So when I look at my NAVIGRAPH approach chart, I have the ILS frequency at 110.3, which is on here, and it is IHKZ, so it's definitely good there, but it doesn't have the course in here. It's got course 121 down here, which is our final approach course, and it is a 3-degree glide slope. So all of that is already in there, so that's fantastic for us. This is the course for this VOR. So that's going to work out nicely. But we want to verify that that's in there, and then the radios should tune themselves, which is also very helpful. What else we got on here? We need to set up our, oh, there it is, radio navigation. Yep, so minimum safe altitudes. So when we start our descent here, keeping in mind we've still got a little ways to go here. We're at 182. We need to be at 108. When we start our descent, the way this is going to work, see, I got myself all discombobulated because I messed things up. So what you're going to do is you're going to change your altitude on here, which we have lots of altitude restrictions. So first things first, or next things next, make sure your altitude restrictions are programmed in here. So we're going to be, let's see, Swan, and then what has it got? And then it's got the Torgy, and it's, let's see, where's Torgy at? Now I got to find Torgy. There's Torgy there. So at Torgy you need to be at or above 13,000 feet, and it's got us at 15,730, so we're good there. At Offson, we need to be at or above 11. We'll be at 13,930. And then at Hamburg, there is no restriction. Go to Jaden, it's at or above 10,000. So let's find Jaden, if it even shows up. It doesn't show up for us. What do we got? We got Hamburg, and then Konya, and then Spooky. Okay, so that's at 7,000. So see how it shows Spooky at 7,100? That's not going to work. We have to be at 7,230 knots. So it's going to be 230 and 7,000 on the nose, right? So that's what we want in there. Didn't let me do anything about it. There we go. There's Spooky there. I haven't done this in a while. Altitude constraint is 7,000 feet, 230 knots. Yeah, so why does it not let me change that? Shouldn't I be able to just type that right in, like /7,000? But it's not doing it for me. So I'm not sure. You're supposed to be able to just type that right in. So really, I mean, it's got the altitude constraint here. Same thing, it's got an altitude constraint and a speed constraint here, but it's not, yeah, not allowed. Gotcha. That's interesting. I don't like that, to be honest with you. I really don't. At the very least, I should be able to click on this somewhere. Yeah, that's not what I want there. I should be able to choose the waypoint, click on it. I can set up a hold there, but that's all it's going to let me do. So if I'm missing something here, you guys please let me know down in the comments. As far as I know, I should be able to click here. This altitude constraint, see, it's saying not allowed, but I mean, there it is. So I put it at a hard 7,000. So does it stay there? Let's see. See, it's still showing 7,100. I don't care for that at all. But I can't do anything about it, so it is what it is. At least it's not too high. It's 7,100 feet. So there we go. And then you've got Krug from there, which is a hard 7,000, and that's already programmed in. And then it shows a discontinuity because that'll put us on the approach from there. Right? And so then I look at my approach and I say, okay, where am I supposed to come in on the approach at? I see Krug here, and then it's FX, and then Zesty. So there's actually a waypoint in there that's missing. So I'm going to put that in. It's EFEXX. So EFEXX. And that's after Krug. And then we want to get rid of the flight plan discontinuity because we want from effects, we want to connect directly to Zesty. So hit clear that out, insert, and then it's KINS, and then speed limit, and then on in from there. So there's another waypoint missing. We could put it in if we want after KINS. It's called WABS, WABBS. So if we put that in, and that comes after KINS, so we'll put it where this speed limiter is. Alright, and then you see it just connected that one because they're already connected. And then it moved the speed limit back up here. And then that is our last waypoint on the approach. Alright, so sometimes you got to do that. You got to go through and you got to make sure everything's set the way you want it. So make sure you take the time to do that. And then anything else? Company messages, no, we're not worried about that. Descent checklist, approach and landing briefing, we need to perform those. We've got just enough time to do it, so let's take a look. Alrighty, so it's going to be the Torgi 3 arrival today. ATIS is on 135.35. Our airport elevation is 842 feet. You can see we've got in big purple letters here, turbojet aircraft descend via Mach number until intercepting 280 knots. Maintain 280 until slowed by the star or assigned by ATC. We're coming in from Swan direct to Torgi here. It's skipped Eric's for whatever reason. Torgi, we're at or above 13, then it's Austin, Hamburg, Konya, Spooky, and then Krug. You saw me setting all that up inside the FMC. Anyway, so we are landing on runway 12 left. If we look down here, it gives us the same information. Basically, this is your plan view, this is your text view. It's all pretty simple stuff. Transition levels is at 18,000, and I think we're going to go on that. So let's take a look at the approach. And here we have it, ILS or localizer runway 12 right. I think I said 12 left, I meant 12 right. ATIS is on 135.35, Minneapolis approach on 126.95. Tower for us is going to be 126.7. I don't know if you guys can see that real well. Even I'm having a hard time with it. And then ground, we are going to be to the north to start. I don't know. We'll probably be on 121.8. Doesn't matter. We're not using it right now anyway. Localizer frequency is 110.3 with a final approach course of 121 degrees. Glide slope intercept at Kins 3,000 feet. And for missed approach, climb to 1,300 feet, then a climbing right turn to 3,000 direct to the FGT VOR. You can see what that looks like down here, and then we would hold there. So we're coming in over here at Krug, then FX, that's the extra waypoint we put in there because it was having us go from here straight to here. That's why you want to check this. And then a right turn to 095 to Zesty, and we should be able to capture the localizer there pretty easy. And then Kins and then Wobbs is that other waypoint we put in there. Move this up and you can see that profile view. So 4,000 at Zesty, we'll double check that here in a sec. 3,000 at Kins, and then on Wobbs we should already be, that's a little shy of our, what do you call it, missed approach point. But you see the dotted lines here? That's for a DME, right? So localizer only DME approach. It's giving you the distances from the localizer. I think that's why they have the dotted lines in there. I know this one's for the missed approach, or it's to execute a missed approach from here. I don't know. You guys tell me. That's kind of weird, actually, now that I think about it. Pappy lights on the left-hand side. There's your missed approach in a picture format for those of us who don't read so good. And Cat 1 ILS decision altitude is 1,042 feet. And that takes care of our arrival and approach briefing. We're coming up on this pretty quick. Now, based on those altitude restrictions being in here for the most part pretty good. Let's see, Krug was 7,000, and then FX, what was FX again? FX doesn't have one. Zesty needs to be 4,000. And see, okay, there's Zesty, 4,000 feet there. See how this has, it has this D cell 250 and 3,000 feet, and then it's got this one at 4,000. That doesn't make any sense to me, right? Not only that, we're at 210 here, so it should be 210 slash, we'll just call it, we'll just call it 4,000. But if I do that, yeah, see, it's not letting me do it for some reason. Let's see if I can clear it out of there. Not allowed. See, that doesn't make sense. It's not letting me clear it out of there. So I don't like that. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And I can see that causing us some issues. But we'll see what happens. We're going to have to keep an eye on it. But then it's 3,000 at Kins. And then there's Wobbs and on in from there. So we should be good to go on everything. We're just about at that top of descent point. So it should work out quite nicely, actually. And do we have anything else? Just the descent checklist itself, which we can also find, as you know, over here. And it is, see how that thing is terrible. It's just, it's ridiculous. I'm not particularly impressed with this EFB, to be honest with you. I'm really not. Okay, so we've done our descent prep. We've done our approach briefing, and then that would take us to the approach checklist. So on my checklist over here, we've got approach and landing briefing have been performed. Minimum safe altitude needs to be checked. I didn't talk about that during the brief, but essentially minimum safe altitude on our approach is 3,500 feet, and on a missed approach would be 2,800 feet. Landing elevation is, what was it again? Hold on, I gotta look on here now. 842 feet, and then the altimeters, they're at standard right now, so we're good to go. Now, all of that being said, what do we add on here? Let's look. Look at that, 109. It's going to be 108 any second, so let's bring this bad boy down. Doesn't matter, just put it at whatever for the moment and push it. Alright, now we'll go ahead and we'll scroll it down. So I'm going to take it all the way down to 3,000 for glide slope intercept, and then push it again so that it goes to that. Now it's going to, initially it looks like it's dive bombing. I don't like, look at that, it's like a dive bomb here. Okay, right click it to pull it, and now see, okay, this I have an issue with. Okay, I had to right click that one to get the flight management system to take control of it, but I have to left click some of these other ones. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Shouldn't it all be the same? I don't know, that's kind of weird. But anyway, here we are on the descent. And there's nothing else to do until we get to the approach. So I'll see you guys back here in a couple minutes, and hopefully things will go a little smoother as we get a little closer. Alrighty folks, as you can see, we're making our turn here at Zesty. Let's take care of our approach checklist really quick. ECAM status is checked. Cabin signs are on. Decision height, we didn't set that. You go down here. The barrow decision height is 1042, so put 1042. Should have put this in sooner. There we go. That takes care of that. Altimeters are set. Bugs are set. Engine mode selector as required. Alright, we should be able to lock onto the localizer now, so let's go ahead and press the localizer switch. This guy right here. Bam, it locks immediately, so we can press the approach switch. And it says Cat 3 single, hit the other autopilot, and there we go, they're both locked in now, and we're locked into the ILS. We can turn this guy over to ILS if we want. Alright, and we need to slow down. 140 is what we're going for. Alright, so bring this down to 140. There we go, capture the glide slope, get the gear down. Next setting of flaps. My bad, too soon. Gotta wait till the gear's all the way down. Slow us down here. Okay, now we bring it. No, still won't let me do it. Oh, because gear's not all the way down yet. There we go, now we can do it. Gear's all the way down. Alright. That came up fast, didn't it? Yeah, it doesn't like the fact that I have the speed brake out instead of armed. There we go, last setting of flaps coming in. Get on the proper view. Track hour coming on a little jump here. There we go. Alright, we're going to leave, where are you going there, airplane? This thing gets a little squirrely to me on approach. It really does. Oh, we're supposed to config 3 on the flaps. My bad, so bring them back up one. Oops, sorry guys. Okay, auto brake we're going to put on low. And landing checklist please. Flaps are set to 3. And gear is down and locked. Auto brake is set to low.
1000.
Glide slope is captured. Wind is all over the place. This is going to be all kinds of fun. And let's take off the autopilot. Alright, so I'm leaving the auto throttle on. And let's try not to mess this up too much, eh? We're looking pretty good though. Remember, small corrections with this thing or you will be wobbling all over the place.
1, 2, right. Altimeter setting.
It keeps saying altimeter setting, but how would you know it changed? How's the aircraft know the altimeter setting changed? It doesn't. This is a heck of a crosswind landing, and the wind is so gusty that it's messing with us.
500.
It's gonna be ugly, guys.
400.
Like I said, small corrections, or you will be
100
wobbling
above,
all
300.
over the place. We're not too bad
Glide
though.
slow.
200.
Little
Minimum.
Glide slow.
I know, we're a little low.
Glide slow.
Shush.
Glide
100.
slow.
$50.
Come
40.
on. Come
30.
on. Now it's just floating.
Retard. Retard 10. 5.
Long landing.
Yeah, I know it's a long landing. Bring in the reverse. It was a very long landing. Ooh, that wind is really trying to pull her to the right. $80 knots. Reverse off. Manual braking.
1,200 meters remaining.
We're fine. That wasn't my best landing ever, but I don't think it was that bad actually. Alright, let's take her off the runway here. Alright, let's get the landing light. Let's see, those can stay on, those can go off, that can go to taxi, stroke can go, nope. That's what I don't like about right clicking. Strobe can go to auto. My landing rate was minus 75 feet per minute. Alright, I believe we're going to be going over here. Yeah, that should be our gate right there. I don't have GSX out there yet, so let me just get it around the corner here, and then we'll call up GSX real quick. That's good there for the moment. Let me call GSX. It's kind of a, you can do this while you're in the air too, just so you guys know. Gate G is what I want, and heavy, what is JS? Yes, give me a follow me. Okay. Wow, that, it looks like it's going to be right there, which is where I was trying to go anyway. Tracker coming off, little jump, here we go. And let me pull out our after landing. There it is. Okay, ground spoilers need to be disarmed, so the spoilers should be, there we go. Flaps can go all the way up. You see the trim is adjusting itself. What else we got here? Landing lights are already off. Anti-ice, we don't need it. We didn't have it on. That's for the APU. Click on that one, click the APU start, there we go. You're supposed to stop the clock, which is this guy right here. And after landing checklist, spoilers are disarmed, flaps are retracted, engine mode selector is normal. Radar, we can turn that off, so we'll turn this guy back over here. And APU as required, and that guy is hauling butt. Is that supposed to be our, was that supposed to be our follow me truck? Where the heck's he going? Okay. We'll just let off the brakes. And tracker coming back on. Swinger back around here. I'm pretty positive that's our gate right there, yeah? Yeah, because it's got the stairs out there and all that nonsense. So, alrighty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and taxi on over there. And then we'll come back on and we'll shut her down. Well, you're probably not going to park it a whole lot better than that, right, folks? I'm proud of myself. All right, let's take a look at our parking flows and checklist here. Parking brake handle is to on or set the parking brakes. I don't know why it says it like that. Parking brake handle to on. Parking brakes are set. We haven't established ground contact yet. We want to make sure that our APU is up and running. It's actually a lot easier. Just go down here, click APU. Again, there we go. It says it's available. Make sure the APU bleed is on, and now we can shut down the engine. So to do that, you guys know the drill. Right click, and the engine shut down, and now we can make ground contact. So we want to request deboarding. We want jetways on both of those doors. Confirm selection. We can jump back here. Actually, we'll wait a second for the doors to open. Engine master 1 and 2 are off. Seatbelt signs can go off at this point. So we'll jump all the way up here. Right click those both off, and then setting this off, and this is on the leaving the aircraft. If you set it off, it allows the emergency batteries to be charged. Not really sure why that is, but there you go. And what else? We need to jump back here, make sure that we set the traffic cones out, set the wheel chocks. We're going to connect the external power. And then we can hop all the way back up top. External power is now available, so we can click on that. And that allows us to go down here and turn off the APU bleed, then the APU. And fuel pumps all go off. They already are. They did that on their own. You can hear passengers starting to deboard back there. And then the only thing left to do at this point, which we're not going to do, we're going to let them deboard the aircraft. We do need to open the doors. Actually, I don't know how they're deboarding. They're probably just walking right through the doors. That figures. Aircraft doors. Okay, so it automatically opened all those for us. So that's kind of nice, actually. So if you look out, if you were to look outside, you'd see the cargo and the baggage is being unloaded. And other than that, the only thing you would do after this is you disconnect ground power, turn off the batteries, and you're done. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to wrap it up for this one. There's a whole lot that does go into flying this airplane, but overall, it's not a hard aircraft to fly. I had a great time with it, and I hope you guys did too. We're definitely going to be spending some time in this airplane, so for you Airbus fans out there, don't you worry. We're going to be getting some time in the Airbus. And depending on how things go over the next month or two, we may even get the A320 series and get flying that again. we'll see what happens. It's really going to depend, but I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Tell your friends about it as well. I'd like to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Look at what he's doing with the luggage. I'd like to get up to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I'd like to do some kind of giveaway if we meet that goal. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be something, so look forward to that. Also, give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content. That lets me know that I'm doing a good job, and if you give it a thumbs down, please do me a favor and give me some constructive but kind criticism down in the comments so that I know what I can do better for you guys. That's it. That's all. No more, folks. So until next time, as always, keep the blue side up unless otherwise instructed by ATC. God bless you all and have an absolutely wonderful day.